Good to see you.
Good to see you.
So look, thanks for sending through the IASA in a box through the post. So I look forward to unboxing that with you and you helping me understand more about what IASA is all about.
Happy to do so.
Great stuff. So let's get into this. So there we go. Right, so let's get rid of the packaging.
That's for your kids to jump on.
Yeah. So right, so what have we got here?
Or you, it depends on how you want to do it.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Yeah, it's I actually kind of good insulation if it gets super cold, right? Anyway, try not to.
They say you're supposed to use newspapers for that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So the first thing I come across, I don't know if you can see this, is IASA UK memory stick.
Oh well, yeah.
So yeah, that's yeah, nice reminder of an event I went to a while back. Right, a bit more packaging. Let's get rid of that. And
this is fun. It's like being, a parent on Christmas or something, right? You just get the pleasure of watching someone else open something.
Well, this is kind of a rehearsal for what Christmas is going to be like, I guess, isn't it?
Right. So.
Right. So yeah, it's okay. So we're unboxing IASA. So okay. So the first thing I'm pulling out here is who is IASA Global. So let's kick off with that, Paul.
Okay.
Tell me about IASA.
So IASA is I guess you would call it my second child. It's my obsession, has been since 2002 when I started a user group in Austin, Texas. And, like any architect, I was struggling for resources and for understanding, what I did. And honestly, since we tend to be kind of a lonely profession, we tend to work very significantly as individuals and individual influencers. I was also looking for a network and for people that I could see eye to eye with that thought like I think, which is different than other roles in large organizations. And so I put together a user group in Austin. And we had 60 people at our first meeting. Roger Sessions, who was very active in the OMG and some of the other groups, was our first speaker, also a noted author. And we had 60 people, and you can guess what the first topic is, which it is at every first meeting in every chapter that IASA starts.
What is architecture?
Oh, what is architecture? Yeah, it's our favorite bar topic. It's our favorite argument, and it's our favorite debate topic, and still is today, which I hope we'll come back to. But either way, along the lines, was doing this, and I realized that we really didn't have what other professions had. We didn't have a centralized body. We didn't have a community. We didn't have a set of content that was meaningful to us and targeted at us. And we didn't have a representative body for our role in industry, meaning there wasn't a group out there promoting architects outside of maybe the vendor community promoting their own architecture way, whether that be one of the large consulting organizations or product companies. So there was really no unification of voice, practice, and resources. And so I started the association in 2002, 2003. And the association's real objective hasn't changed, and that is to make architecture of all types. Now, we started out as the International Association of Software Architects because that seemed like the best term at the time. But in truth, we changed our name a long time ago to just IASA. So we're kind of, IBM. It's like, it doesn't really mean anything anymore because we have just as many business architects, enterprise architects, information architects, et cetera. So the goal and the mission of the organization hasn't changed. That we just want to make architects a real profession. We deliver services to organizations that employ architects. Boy, I tell you, over 20 years, we've been involved in just about everything. We've got master's programs that are accredited to provide architecture practice or master's degree programs to provide degrees. We've worked with much of the Fortune 500, certainly architects from all of them. held events, conferences. We build training and certification. We actually go in and help companies build centers of excellence now around the IDABOC and around other kinds of frameworks that are impactful to architects. We work as much at the solution and agile level as we do as we do at the business architecture or enterprise architecture level. So there really hasn't been anything in the last 15 years that we haven't had at least a link into, whether that be, you know, the FIPO stuff that Cameron was doing, or Business Architecture Guild. And I've just been really honored to get to work with a lot of these amazing organizations, much like what you're working on there through Tanium to build out the architecture practice. Yep. You know, we see our job as to build a platform so that both individuals and communities can build resources and knowledge bases and share those back with other professionals. And we've been pretty good at that.
No, it's a really noble cause. And I think architects perhaps are often quite selfless, and therefore having an organization that's championing and professionalizing and doing all those good things is a great thing to have in the community. So that's good stuff. So the next thing I'm pulling out actually is, and perhaps we can talk to ITABOC a bit here, is and your certifications is learning and certifications is the next thing I'm pulling out of the box here.
Oh, so, wow. Okay. Yeah.
So talk to us a bit more about those learning, and I can see on here we've got kind of different levels of the CITA. And also some kind of architecture-driven digital advantage kind of almost stakeholder kind of courses. So yeah, talk to us a little about that stuff.
So this is one of the great opportunities in the industry, in the profession and the industry, to up the quality of outcomes for organizations globally. And that is figuring out a career progression and an assurance model. So certifications in professions are more than just tests for an individual. They're more than just written tests, or even if you think about like surgeons or doctors, even board certifications are more than just a test for the individual. Mm-hmm. They're an assurance model for the employer and the client. Right. So if I take it, you have to ask, you know, that if you were sick in some way, you'd much rather see a board certified, specialist than you would to see maybe an intern. Right. Yeah. Both are legally capable of doing certain things. Some, though, not. Some you would just rather have a true professional do. And that assurance model is what and growth is what we've spent. Really, we started the skills repository, the competency model, in 2007. So we've spent a very long time figuring out what are the competencies that an architect needs and what are their levels, and how do you help them achieve those levels when some of them require both learning, meaning training or study, and others require experience and demonstrated excellence, right? So I always say they don't let doctors that kill people keep doing that, right? Whereas in technology, we often see people that you see a system where we can't show that person has demonstrated success, right? Mm-hmm. People jump from one job to the next, et cetera, et cetera. And all the weight is on the employer to be able to figure out whether that person is qualified or capable of delivering at the level they need. We actually had one of our certified architects, Mark Greville, said, with the IASA CITA certifications, I can shave off half of my interview time, right? Because I can test the person for quality or for culture fit and for certain types of business fit and things like that.
Which is super, super important, right? Rather than worrying about
So we have 4 levels of certification that that are what we call our career path, that trace an architect. And we've done survey after survey on this about from qualified architects. Yeah. And the first is the foundation certification, which is about shared language and knowledge. Then the associate certification, which is about a depth understanding. Mm-hmm. And then we get to our board certifications, the CITA Professional and the CITA Distinguished. Yep. And those are really about experience and qualification. So our certification program is really about that assurance model that you know you're dealing with a high quality architect.
Mm-hmm.
We have training that goes in between there, as well as mentoring programs. We've run significantly large mentoring programs inside of organizations where we actually help them build, much like in a hospital, a kind of mentoring practice where the next level of senior architect is actually it's not managing, but mentoring the architects that are kind of one step behind that.
Mm-hmm.
So for everything from trying to figure out the body of knowledge and teaching that in our classes, which we have a lot of these days, and then to these kind of mentoring programs, what we're really trying to do in our learning career programs is give architects a solid resource that will help them as individuals and their organization as a practice to just deliver on architecture excellence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether that be software architecture, business architecture, or the entire what we call the architect engagement model.
Okay. No, that sounds really good. I mean, as myself, I've done a number of sort of certifications, and it's difficult, isn't it, to kind of sometimes decide which ones to do. But certainly the ISA ones seem. The nice thing also about ISA is it's global, right? So it's a globally recognized certification. So no, really, really interesting. Thank you for that.
That's actually a really critical point, though, you just made there. So one of the big aha moments for me over the last 20 years of this is that other professions are generally local, right? So you go see a doctor locally generally. And again, I'm not talking about sort of the recent telemedicine and some of that, but even then, the vast majority of the infrastructure is local. I mean, you're a doctor in France. That doesn't make you a doctor in the United States.
No, there's different regulatory kind of rules and policies and drugs and so on, isn't there?
Our profession is global.
Mm-hmm.
You're just as likely to work with a certified architect in India, in China, in South America, in North America, as you are in Europe.
It's a really interesting distinction, isn't it? And we could also make the same comparison with building architects as well. I mean, in most cases, a building architect, so rare examples would maybe be where you're bridging between one country and another, where you'd have to deal with multiple kind of sets of rules. But actually, you're right. I mean, that's a really impactful point, isn't it? Is that we operate in this kind of global digital economy, and architects are very much having to sort of work their way through that and navigate that globally. So a really interesting distinction when people say, "Oh, well, shouldn't you just follow the same model as the doctors or the building industry?" Yeah, really interesting point.
Well, it's extremely important too, because right now the difference between the opportunities and experience and competency models in different parts of the world, not to mention culture, right? Mm-hmm. The cultural exchanges and understanding how to make that work. Given our need to facilitate change and interact with so many different stakeholders, you really have to have a common body of knowledge and a common competency model to be able to make that work in a global economy. Otherwise, architects and it's not as bad with engineers or developers, but really architects are a culture spanning group, mm-hmm. and we really have to work together to kind of bring the levels to similar places. Yeah.
Well, the nice thing is actually the next thing I'm pulling out is it's talking about that community. So community development is the, in fact, I'll just say that again, given I had an annoying notification come up. So Paul, actually, that's really topical, because the next thing I'm pulling out here is community development. So, and of course, Architect Tomorrow and ISA are kind of working together to build an architect community. And so, we have some experience of that. But for those that don't know about that side of ISA, talk to us a bit about the community development side.
Well, in communities where ISA started, that was, we were a loose collaboration of user groups for quite some time.
I thought you were going to say a loose collaboration of arguments of architects then, but anyway.
Also that, yes. In fact, that's actually been my greatest pleasure, is when we do working groups on community, on knowledge development, on practice development, on best practice techniques, is to bring, our favorite thing is to actually bring people who fundamentally disagree and put them in a working group, and then just enjoy that process. It doesn't necessarily speed the process, but the results are significantly better. I remember in our first, one of our first development efforts, having a hardcore agile development person, a hardcore engineer, and a hardcore business person, business focused architect, and just literally screaming at each other. And it was so rewarding. But community-wise, that's what we do. We bring architects together, right? So we have both topic as well as, and we're really happy to be working with Architect Tomorrow, as well as a number of other communities that are not necessarily ISA communities. It's not really about ISA owning the world. It's about facilitating these connections. So we've had upwards of 50 working chapters, as well as partnerships with other community organizations through the years. The community model is again, we provide services to develop communities as well as partnerships. So we think of ourselves as a kind of community platform where we've had 200 to 400 members in a single community in places in the United States. We also have topical communities. So for example, we're bringing together an integration architecture topic community where we're really just trying to bring the world's greatest minds on integration architecture together, and ask them to participate in developing out a body of knowledge related to that. AI, ethics in architecture, sustainability, all of these are great topic areas where we can build communities together. I think that it's up to the architects to decide whether they want to participate. And I think one of our greatest opportunities as a field is to actually just start participating in things. Architects are hard to get and keep.
Can be a cynical bunch. Also incredibly busy.
We're both cynical as well as, in many cases, kind of loners. And there's sort of to be an owner, to be effective as an architect, you have to have a certain amount of. The word is probably easiest said as ego, but that sounds negative. You have to have a certain amount of self-reliance.
I tell you what, resilience and reliance, and kind of knowing that whilst there are a diverse range of opinions, that you need to kind of try and select the right path is super important, right? Stick to that. And talking of engagement, so the next thing I'm pulling out here is corporate engagement. So talk a bit about your corporate engagement.
This is the thing that I'm most excited about. We spent 7 to 10 years figuring out how to make an architect, and quite frankly, we know how to make an architect now. There's no question what the competencies are, how you move them forward, etc. There is a lot of open question about what you do with an architecture practice and how a group of architects, what we call, engage with an organization. And the IDABOK, the newest version of the IDABOK, is really based on this notion that there are best practices and there are working practice. And what we're doing is effectively collecting those concepts. So this might be things like, what do requirements look like in an architecture practice? What does an architecture repository actually look like in the real world? What's working and what's not? And these concepts, SAFE and TOGAF are very prescriptive frameworks. What we're doing with our Center of Excellence and with our corporate engagements is we're actually building a descriptive and reflective or a reflective body of knowledge, right? In the sense that we're looking at what is common practice around road mapping. What are some tools that you can download immediately to do better road mapping? It describes what road mapping is, but it also describes how you might implement that or decide on implementing that in your practice. And it isn't tool-based, right? It's not just about the software package like LeanIX or whatever, or Orbitz or all the different, architect-focused tools. But it really is about how do the architects in that practice understand it? So I was recently working with a major, a really large architecture practice where each of the architects was really doing road mapping in a fundamentally different way, and they just couldn't communicate because they hadn't actually thought about it. They thought about it, but they hadn't ever worked together to say, well, what do we need here? And this isn't just about common notation. It's really about understanding what does that roadmap represent to our stakeholders? And by the way, how do we have a method for managing our stakeholders? So each of the concepts links to the other concepts that are essential in an architecture practice, whether again, you're a group of software architects, or you're a group of business architects, or you're an enterprise architecture group. And the ITABOC is about that implementation. So
spell out what ITABOC is for those that don't know.
Sorry, ITABOC is the IT architecture body of knowledge.
Okay.
We've called it that forever, even though, to be honest with you, there's as much business architecture in there as there is solution software architecture in there.
But it's got a nice ring to it, ITABOC, isn't it?
Yeah, it does. You know, we almost call we've talked about changing it to just the architect body of knowledge. You know,
right.
because we as a profession get kind of lost in our specializations, right? So I'm a software architect, so nobody else is an architect. If you don't write code, then you're not an architect.
Yeah, that classic one.
Yeah, you know, or if I'm a business architect and if you don't know what a strategy score, a balanced scorecard is, or business model canvas, well, then you're not an architect. What we're trying to do is get rid of those kinds of let's define what architecture is, right, and start talking about what makes successful architecture practices. And so we've gotten to implement this with a lot of really large organizations and their centers of excellence, and we're going to continue doing so. We've got some brilliant people writing the articles. And what I love are the tools, what we call a structured canvas approach, which are just these really simple canvases you can put on a wall or share on a Zoom meeting, and just fill out, and it helps you solve a problem, but it also connects to solving these other problems, right? And it's a really powerful method that I can't wait till it's finally published. We've been working on it for a while, but if you have organizations that need help or are looking to improve their architecture practice, it's a great way to do it.
Great. Well, Paul, look, this leads us really nicely on to how do folks get in touch with us if they like the sound of any of these things. How do they get in touch with you? How do they get involved?
I am probably the easiest person to find in the whole world of architecture, right? Like I think there are probably like 50 group email addresses, maybe 100 that will reach me. So pretty much just post something on LinkedIn and someone will go, okay. But no, isaglobal.org is our website. And pretty much there's contact us and that kind of thing there. If you're interested in community or education or participating or thought leadership, we also have the Build Conference, which we're really excited to be partnering with Architect Tomorrow on, as well as Tanium. And so the Build Conference, you can get involved in that. There's email, LinkedIn. We've got groups everywhere. I mean, it's just a lot of ways to do that.
Brilliant. Well, look, I've pretty much got to the end of the box here. So let's just throw.
Did we not send you any cake?
So this is the last thing I had in the box, which is this. It's a mysterious thing, right? What is this thing that you find in every box, and it's dangerous, and you must not eat it. It's very clear. It's very clear about that. So I'm definitely.
You can't eat it, but can you do anything else with it? I mean,
I happen to know that these are in boxes to kind of keep moisture out, right? And actually, I don't. Even though it says throw it away, I don't. I put these bizarrely in a really geeky way. I put these in my clothes drawers, right, to keep them keep clothes.
So the
next time you get one of these,
cedar closet or something, right?
to keep things. So don't throw it away. Definitely don't eat it, because I think it'll dry out your insides. But don't throw it away, because actually they do have a use. But so there you go. I've told you something after you've told me so much about ISA. Look, Paul, on that note, it's been fantastic to talk to you. Thanks for your time. It's been fascinating learning more about ISA, and I personally will be taking some kind of actions off the back of this chat. So I hope others will who've been watching this as well. And once again, thanks for your support and partnership on the Architecture Show. So things we really look forward to taking part in the next Built conference. So where we're doing the conscious architectural choices.
I'm excited about that. I'm really looking forward to that one.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be a challenge to kind of give everyone a voice, given we've got a few people on the panel and lots to talk about.
Well, let's bring this one last topic up, though. I know we're going over time, and I apologize, but I think the Build Conference is really important because it's called Architecting for Good, right? And I have this radical belief in architecture as a real profession, and I don't think it's going to be us that professionalizes. I think the world is going to force us to professionalize. Now, this is my radical belief for the day, and that is, I believe that the world is going to start looking at us for liability ultimately. I mean, that's 20 years from now. I don't know when, but 10 years ago, I predicted that software was going to impact 10, 15 years ago when I started, really believing these sort of ethical challenges, that software was going to impact people's lives. It was going to impact airplanes. It was going to impact identity and security and safety for human beings, as well as just cultural issues and things like that. And that means in all fields where we build complex things that need to be good to provide safety for humans, the people that build them are certified and ethically controlled. And only in IT do we get away with anyone who's, got 5 years of experience can build stuff. And again, I'm not talking about the average retail website. I'm talking about heart transplants. I'm talking about airlines. I'm talking about, our children's identity and safety.
Well, social media, kind of children using social media is a kind of one. So this is very much a theme that we're keen to explore as well. The darker side of digital is the kind of working title I have.
That's a good title.
And I think you're right. I think if we don't kind of become part of the solution, ironically, if we don't provide part of the solution to society, we will ultimately get technology regulations thrown at us. And we know that regulators often aren't brilliant at understanding industries and understanding challenges. So I think it's kind of beholden on us to really kind of help shape a lot of this stuff. So let's hold that thought, because I'd love to schedule some time to talk to you about that, in the future, if not part of the Build conference. I'm sure it'll come up in our talk. But look, Paul, it's been great. It's been fantastic.
It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, and I'll speak to you soon, no doubt.
Thanks a lot, Oliver.
All right.